Hi everybody. I'm sorry folks, I missed a couple nights, and to make up for it, we're going to read tonight the last two chapters of Mrs. Peter Rabbit by Thornton W. Burgess. Two more chapters to go. We'll read them both. Now, first of all, hello to Jackson, Matthew, Marjorie, and Emma, all here in Maine, and to Malia and Lucas in Missouri, to Kai Ming and Rukai in Washington State, Hope here in Maine, and Dylan in Maine and Lucas in Maine, our friends Leslie and Mary way over in England, across the North Atlantic, to Ezzy and Indy in Oklahoma, to Kayla here in Maine, and to Sylvia, Macy, and Lillian in Maine, Happer and Judson in Maine, Caden and Xander here in Maine, Evangeline and Isaac in Rhode Island, and hello to Mabel in the country of China, to Oliver, Madeline, and Wyatt way out west, and to Alex here in Maine, up along the Penobscot River, north of Bangor. Okay, let's see now. Chapter 21. Let's see now. What happened in the last chapter? Reddy Fox thinks he's figured out what's going on in the old briar patch. Now, chapter 31. Blackie the Crow has sharp eyes. Blackie the Crow. Mischief always waits to greet idle hands and idle feet. That's by Peter Rabbit, and that's very true. That is what a lot of people say about Blackie the Crow. Of course, it is true that Blackie does get into a lot of mischief. But if people really knew him, they would find that he isn't as black as he looks. In fact, Blackie the Crow does a whole lot of good in his own peculiar way. But people are always looking for him to do bad things. And you know, you must always see what you expect to see. Thus, the good Blackie does isn't seen, while the bad is. And so he has grown to have a reputation blacker than the coat he wears. But this doesn't worry Blackie the Crow. No, sir, it doesn't worry him a bit. You see, he has grown used to it. And then he is so smart that he is never afraid of being caught when he does do wrong things. No one has sharper eyes than Blackie, and no one knows better how to use them. There is very little going on in the green forest or on the green meadows that he misses when he is about. The day after Reddy Fox visited the old briar patch, and with his wonderful nose found out Peter Rabbit's secret, Blackie just happened to fly over the old briar patch on his way to Farmer Brown's cornfield. Now, being over the old briar patch, he would look right down into it and see all through it. Just as he reached it, he remembered having heard Sammy Jay say something about gossipy little Jenny Wren's having said that there was great news there. He hadn't thought much about it at the time, but now that he was right there, he might as well have a look for himself and see if there was any truth in it. So Blackie the Crow flew a little lower, and his sharp eyes looked this way and that way through all the bramble bushes of the old briar patch. He saw Peter Rabbit right away and winked at him. He thought Peter looked worried and anxious. Peter must have something on his mind, thought Blackie. I wonder where Mrs. Peter is. I guess I've got the yawns tonight, folks. Just then, he caught sight of her under the thickest growing sweet briar bush. He had opened his mouth to shout, "Hello, Mrs. Peter," when he saw something that surprised him, so that he didn't speak at all. He almost forgot to flap his wings to keep himself in the air. He hovered right where he was for a few minutes, looking down through the brambles. Then, with a hoarse chuckle, he started for the Smiling Pool, forgetting all about Farmer Brown's cornfield. "Caw, caw, caw!" he shrieked. "Peter Rabbit's got a family! Peter Rabbit's got a family!" Reddy Fox heard him and ground his teeth. "Now Old Man Coyote will know. We'll try to catch those young rabbits, when they ought to be mine because I found out about them first," he grumbled. Jimmy Skunk heard Blackie and grinned broadly. "So that's the great news Jenny Wren found out," said he. "I hope Peter will take better care of his babies than he ever has of himself. I must call at once." Redtail the Hawk heard. He smiled too, but it wasn't a kindly smile like Jimmy Skunk's. "I think young rabbit will taste very good for a change," said he. Oh, Redtail the Hawk. That's the end of that chapter. Now we'll go on to chapter 32, which is, I believe, the last chapter of the book. We'll see what happens. Peter Rabbit's nursery. With home, the home you call your own, it really doesn't matter where. There's no place in all the world that ever will or can compare. That's by Peter Rabbit. The news was out, at last, thanks to Blacky the Crow. Peter Rabbit had a family. Yes, sir, Peter Rabbit had a family. Right away, the old briar patch began the most interesting place on the Green Meadows to all the little people who lived there and in the nearby Green Forest. Of course, all of Peter's friends called as soon as ever they could. They found Peter looking very proud and very important and very happy. Mrs. Peter looked just as proud and just as happy, but she also looked very anxious. You see, while she was very glad to have so many friends call, there were also other visitors. That is, they were not exactly callers, but they hung around the outside of the old briar patch. They seemed quite as much interested as the friends who really called. Indeed, they seemed more interested. Who were they? Why, Reddy Fox was one. Then there was Old Man Coyote, also Redtail the Hawk, and Digger the Badger, and just at dusk, Hooty the Owl. Remember Hooty almost caught Peter on his way to the old pasture? They all seemed very much interested indeed, but every time little Mrs. Peter saw them, she shivered. You see, she couldn't help thinking that there was a dreadful hungry look in their eyes. If the truth is to be told, there probably was. But happy-go-lucky Peter Rabbit didn't let this worry him. Handy grown up from a teeny-weeny baby and been smart enough to escape all those dangers which worried Mrs. Peter so. And if he could do it, of course his own babies could do it, with him to teach them and show them how. Besides, they were too little to go outside of the old briar patch now. Indeed, they were too little to go outside their nursery, which was in a clump of sweet briar bushes in the very middle of the old briar patch. And Peter felt that there they were perfectly safe. "It isn't time to worry yet," said Peter to little Mrs. Peter, as he saw the fright in her eyes as the shadow of Redtail passed over them. "I don't believe in borrowing trouble. Time enough to worry when there's something to worry about. And that won't be until these little scalawags of ours are big enough to run around and get into mischief. Did you ever see such beautiful babies in all your life?" For a minute, the worried look had left little Mrs. Peter, and she gazed at the 4 little helpless babies fondly. "No," she replied softly, "I never did. Oh, Peter, they are perfectly lovely. This one is a perfect image of you, and I'm going to call him Little Pete. And don't you think his brother looks like his grandfather? I think we'll call him Little Jed." Peter coughed behind his hand as if something had stuck in his throat. He had no love for Little Jed's grandfather, old Jed Thumper, the big gray old rabbit who had tried so hard to drive him from the old pasture. But he didn't say anything. If Mrs. Peter wanted to name this one Little Jed, he wouldn't say a word. Aloud, he said, "I think, my dear, this one looks just as you must have looked when you were little. We'll call her Fuzzy. Her sister we'll call Wuzzy," continued Peter. "Was ever there such a splendid nursery for baby rabbits?" "I don't believe ever there was, Peter." "It's better than my old nursery in the old pasture," replied little Mrs. Peter, as with a sigh of perfect happiness she stretched out beside their 4 babies, and Peter softly tiptoed away to the nearest sweet clover patch, with his heart almost bursting with pride. Of the doings of Peter and Mrs. Peter Rabbit and their 4 children, there are many more stories, so many that one book will not hold all of them. Besides, Bowser the Hound insists that I must write a book about him, and I've promised to do it right away. So the next book will be Bowser the Hound. That's the end of Mrs. Peter Rabbit. Hope you all enjoyed it. I did. And we'll start a book probably tomorrow, okay, next day at the latest. Bye-bye, everybody.